And then the fantastic Doug Collins. I'm so excited you're here, Doug. Doug and I met through the magic of the internet and bonded over our love of UX, Legos, and other and bad UX. Doug was kind enough to come and speak for our students when Al and I were teaching at Coder Girl and knocked it out of the park. I'm really excited to hear him speak again tonight and has quite the Twitter following. Many fans on the Twitter, my mom would say. Very popular on the Twitter.
It's the only
And I'll
place
let
I've
you
ever been popular in my whole life, so it's a wonderful life change for me. Um,
I will let you talk about your job and what you do yourself, but I promise you will not be disappointed. Doug is he became a favorite human and has a vast amount of knowledge and does something really great every day on Twitter that I love, which is post a question and ask people to engage and answer that question. And it ranges in topic. It always ties back to UX somehow, but it's everything from preferences to job experiences and all kinds of things. And it's just a really great interactive way. It's a way to take Twitter from being a dumpster fire to a place where you can grow and learn. um, and go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, if you want to join in on that, I usually post it sometime around about 7 a.m. Central Time. You can always search for the hashtag UX Talk or just follow me over on Twitter. I'll throw up my social handles at a few different points in the presentation tonight. Love seeing people join in and comment on that. It's a wonderful way to grow. And for those of you that are looking for a job, the UX Talk hashtag is a great thing because those questions that I ask, I usually pull from list of questions to ask at UX job interviews. Good way to kind of get your juices flowing and think about your response and see how other people respond to the same questions.
And Doug has some major heavy hitters in his following who chime in. I've seen Jared Spool in there and all kinds of folks. And I actually saw you disagree with Jared Spool, which I loved.
Jared and
so,
I, we like
in the friendliest of ways, but I thought it was fantastic because
yeah.
he's probably doing okay in the ego department, I bet.
Probably fine, yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a couple events coming up. Karen Van Houten is going to be talking about how to get wicked awesome. If you like to be awesome and you like curse words, this one's going to be NSFW for sure. She's going to talk about how to really get what you want and be awesome at it. And then Liz Horvath, who is another amazing pal I made through the Twitter. She hails from Atlanta, and she's going to do a talk about enterprise UX, and she's gamifying it, called Two Truths and a Lie. So this should be really fun. And then these are all the places that you can meet us. And we will come back to this at the end so Elena can tell you all about membership. And without further ado, Doug, would you like to take over? Do you want to drive or do you want me to drive for you? You sent me a brief email.
Yeah. No, I'll go ahead and drive. Let me go ahead and request the screen share here. Or I think you might have to pass it to me, but still.
And Doug, what would your preference be? Do you want to pause periodically and have me read off stuff from the chat? What's easiest for you?
Yeah, I'm not going to be keeping an eye on the chat, so jump on in. Yeah, definitely jump in and ask whatever comes up, and if there's something that is best left for the end, I'll leave that to your good judgment.
Okay, so if folks want to if you have a question, if you can just put a Q at the beginning so I know it's a question for Doug, and then Doug, if you want to take some occasional pauses, and Alan take turns tossing questions. I was going to make some sort of sports ball reference, but I don't know anything about sports.
That's okay. I'm trying to go sports team. Absolutely. I'm trying to share, and it's
wait, hold on. Yeah, okay, now try.
Let's see here. Oh, there we go. All right, let me
I
get
was
my.
like softball it, then I'm like, no, stay in your lane, Holly. You're already not.
That's great. Yeah, and you get to see double me for a moment while I get my slide decks up and running here. There we go.
That's what mine looks like too, with like 800 tabs.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all for joining in today. I appreciate it. It's really wonderful to see everybody here and see everybody that is joining from around the country, around the world. Whoever, I always say, whoever you are, wherever you might be, thanks so much for joining. It's always a pleasure to be able to get to speak with you. Today, we're talking about evil designs. We're talking about fighting for good in the world of user experience. So, just a quick little bit here as I move my Zoom and other controls around. Make sure we get over to the next slide. This is me, lovely, beautiful me. My name is Doug Collins, of course. I'm a UX and UI manager for Western Union. I manage a small team of both. So I've got another UX individual and 2 UI folks based out of India. That's why I get to use the term UX and UI and why I get to wear this wonderful shirt about UX and UI to keep project managers from making design decisions. I've been doing UX for about 12 years at this point in time. Started off working for Nordstrom Bank. I've also done UX and design for E-Trade for a company called CACI, currently at Western Union. Also, have worked with Four Winds Interactive, the Denver Broncos, been kind of all over the place, which is great. You may have seen me around writing articles, adobe.com, UX Booth, UX Mastery. You can find me on pretty much any social media outlet at Doug Collins UX. If you are curious if I have an account, look for that username. And if you find that, that's me. So that's about where I'm at. So if you want to engage with me, follow me, talk with me more, please feel free to reach out. I love interacting with the community, and you all are the reason why I do this. I love being able to give back to the community that's given so much to me. So thank you again, once again, for being. Before we get started too far tonight, I do want to have just a quick little talk about language and the language that we're going to use. So I see Brandon smiling over there because this came from the email he sent me last night. I've as I put together my presentation, was thinking about the conversation that Brandon had sent me a message last night. He essentially said the kind of overall context of the email was, I've been hearing some things about using the term dark in a negative way, and I don't think that's very, very accurate. Dark patterns really is a misnomer because dark isn't bad. I mean, when we think about it, in darkness there's beauty, and in darkness there's peace, and in darkness there's rest and comfort. It's time to end the metaphor that dark is bad. So many wonderful things in the world are dark. I could not make it through life without dark chocolate. Dark chocolate is where I'm at. Dark beer, you put the two together, dark chocolate and dark beer, you have a great evening on your hands. The dark themes on our phones are what allow us to use our technology considerately for ourselves and for others. It's important to use words in a way that really highlight the importance of the world around us. And I'm going out of my way to make this shift in my language tonight, especially on the term dark patterns. And here's why it's important. It's important because of you, and it's important because of the people around us. So in the UX, many people in the UX and design community are people of color. Many of the people we serve, our users, are people of color. The language that we use with ourselves and our colleagues and our friends is important, and our profession is no different. So why should we use the word dark to define something that's negative or evil? We could easily use that same word, same language to describe the skin tone of our friends and colleagues. It's a problem. Absolutely, it's a problem. Here in America and around the world, we're in the midst of one of the most turbulent times in the context of racial equality. It's important to do what we can to support our friends, family, and colleagues and users in this fight. And one thing we can do now, today, is to begin to change our mindset around the words we use and how we perceive metaphors of darkness. I realize that some might think that this approach might be overly sensitive, but like wearing a mask or getting a vaccine, it costs us very little. And like wearing a mask or getting vaccinated and changing our mindsets of the way that we use and perceive metaphors of darkness, we help care for those in our community. Both our actions and our words have an immensely powerful effect, both on the people we love, the work that we do, and the people that we talk to, even people that we'll never meet. So, will I slip up tonight in my language? Almost undoubtedly, yes. I've been calling these dark patterns for a couple of years at this point in time. It's ingrained in my language, and it's something that I'm trying to change. That said, despite my best efforts, things will probably sneak in there. But like all fights worth fighting, the fight against racism doesn't rely on us to be perfect in every situation. It relies on good people doing their level best to make a change when presented with the opportunity to make the world a better place. And I'm scrolling through slides there because I'm trying to scroll through what I'm trying to say, but that's kind of what I'm getting at here. And after all, this is why we came here tonight. It's why most of us got into user experience in the first place, making the world a better place. That's my goal here tonight. So I hope you all will appreciate that I'm going to be using some different language and not calling this dark patterns, even though we advertise this as a class on dark patterns. The language that we're going to use tonight is poison patterns, because A, it's a little bit alliterative, and B, it kind of gets us away from the dark pattern side of things. And poison patterns really, after all, is what this is all about. They poison the user experience to the point of no return. Brandon, I want to thank you for bringing this up to my attention last night and asking me my thoughts about this. Very prescient going into it. I'm really glad you did. Thank you very much. I see the chat is lighting up as I go through this. I'm not reading what's going on there, but hopefully everything's going well. I will say I'm not a perfect person. I'm doing my best and trying to be an ally for good in this fight. So I hope that people will take my
Doug,
lead. And
you were doing just fine. There was a Belle Biv DeVoe, that girl is poison reference. Mike started it though, so he's holding down the troll position well. He might have dipped into the sugar bowl today.
That's okay.
But if I had applause, I would. I think that I wish I had, like, the TV applause. I think that language does matter. And as someone who cares a lot about accessibility, as you know, and being a person who has disabilities, it does matter whether it's pronouns or changing our language. And I just want to thank you for being thoughtful and being open to adjust, because we do make mistakes, but we have to stay open to learn, right? And that's exactly what you're saying. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's particularly hard reworking your your slides the night before a presentation. But I'm glad that I was brought to this conversation. And I hope people will follow my lead and just know that even if you can't be perfect, as long as we're trying to move all together in the right direction, that's really where we want to be. So thank you all. We're going to move past this a little bit, but did want to make that point as we talk about poison patterns tonight. I'm also curious if anybody else has any ideas for good names for these, that we can avoid some of the dark metaphors here as dark equaling bad. So let's talk about poison patterns and what they are. So poison patterns are any designs created to trick users into doing something that's against their best interests for the benefit of somebody else. There are three key elements that I use to identify one of these patterns: intent, deceit, and benefit. Those are the three things that we're looking at. So the design must be intentional. And essentially, what we're looking at here is Hanlon's razor. You should never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity, but don't rule out malice. Was somebody here trying to make this particularly difficult to figure out whether or not you're muting or unmuting this microphone? Probably not. Probably just wasn't a good design when it came down to it. It must deceive the user into do something else. So we got our deceit portion. It must deceive the user into doing something against their best interest. That is kind of our point number two. Point number three is that the benefit of the design must not fall primarily to the user. Usually it's a monetary benefit, but it can be benefits of other things: times, material, effort. That benefit must not fall to the user, but must fall to the designing business or organization. Again, the three key points: intent, deceit, and benefit. That's really what we're looking at for these patterns. Let's take a quick look at sort of how these patterns work and what goes into them. So poison patterns leverage different aspects of the human condition to get us to do things, again, that we wouldn't normally otherwise do. We're really looking at a few different pieces here. We're looking at the psychology of human computer interaction. We're looking at things like reading patterns, and we're looking at things like social psychology: shame, greed, guilt, scarcity. We're going to look at each of these kind of individually here and talk about each one and how they'll come into play in some of these patterns. Let's talk first about frustration. So when we talk about frustration, it's important to note there are a couple of different types of frustration. There's internal frustration, which is difficulty fulfilling a personal goal, desire, an instinct, or repairing a deficiency. It's an internal blocking that happens inside of us when an individual's mind, either through lack of ability, confidence, conflicting goals and desires, or fear, just isn't able to complete whatever task or workflow it is they're trying to get through. There's also external frustrators. These are difficulty overcoming physical roadblocks and or difficult tasks. External blocking happens when an individual sorry, happens to an individual when elements outside of their control block their success, such as physical roadblocks, difficult tasks, or something that's just a perceived waste of time. It's interesting to note that with frustration, the overall effect can be positive or negative. One's ability to resist becoming frustrated when facing a difficult task can actually make them more likely to complete something that they perceive as frustrating. Some people have what's called a high frustration tolerance. It takes them a longer time to become frustrated. Some people have a low frustration tolerance. I feel like that's me. People who get frustrated with tasks after a shorter time. One thing that's interesting to note is that there are studies out there that show that working on a computer decreases your frustration tolerance, and that there's a correlation between having high wealth and having low frustration tolerances in some circumstances. So the psychology behind frustration and how it's used is really closely tied to trying to get you to complete a task, or particularly complete a purchase, by making the alternative, abandoning that purchase and going back to the beginning or going to a different site, more frustrating than it might otherwise be. Next up, we've got shame and guilt. So shame is an unpleasant psychological emotion arising from a negative evaluation of yourself. It's associated with feelings of powerlessness, of worthlessness, feelings of mistrust. Guilt is a cognitive or emotional experience that occurs when a person believes or realizes, accurately or not, that they've compromised their own standards of conduct, or have violated some sort of universal norm or moral, and that they bear a significant responsibility for that violation. These are used against us in similar ways in these poison patterns. They leverage a user's feelings of responsibility, either personally or socially, to manipulate users into a decision that's favorable for the company that's trying to sell them something, not favorable for them. We also have to consider cognitive load. Cognitive load is essentially the amount of effort our brain is using to complete a particular task, or just to do work. There are different types of cognitive load. There's something called intrinsic cognitive load, which is the effort associated with a specific topics. So some topics are just more difficult than others, right? If you are, say, doing basic addition and subtraction, well, that's a lot easier than doing advanced calculus. That has a lower intrinsic cognitive load. There's also extraneous cognitive load, which is the way information or tasks are presented to the user. So if I wanted to, if you had never seen a square before and I was trying to get across the concept of a square to you, I could say that a square is a parallelogram with 90-degree angles and each side being of equal length. Or I could just go to my whiteboard here and draw you a square and say, here we go, here's the square. So the way that we present the information to users is, again, part of the extraneous cognitive load. And then there's also something called germane cognitive load, the work that's put into creating a permanent store of knowledge. This can be used when trying to make comparisons and building kind of a schema of value within our heads when we're trying to compare items in order to make a purchase. It's building that permanent store of knowledge and being able to make those intelligent comparisons. Everyone has their own load processing limits. It's going to be different for people just based off of your personality. It's going to be different for you based off of a number of different factors. Your cognitive load may go up or down if you're hungry, if you're tired, if you're worn out, if you're frustrated. Every aspect of our life has some effect on our cognitive load. And when we kind of reach the limit of our cognitive load, we start to take sort of mental jumps to decrease that cognitive load for us. So we'll start to do things like stereotyping, we'll start to make assumptions and use other strategies aimed at reducing that load. And that's where dark patterns thrive, is they use those strategies against us. They max out our cognitive load and use those strategies against us in order to get us to make a decision that is not in our best interest. Trust is another key one. So trust is the belief that a certain person or system is going to behave in a particular way. It's a feeling of confidence and security that a person or entity cares about you. Trust is rarely absolute, though. It's restricted to particular situations. So I trust my wife absolutely to go out, get the groceries, go to the grocery store, and make sure that we have everything that we need for the week. She does a great job, tremendously helpful. I would not trust my wife to do open heart surgery on me because she has a master's of library science and is not a doctor. So the trust level there, bless you, Brandon, the trust level there is different for each person, and it's rarely absolute. Trust is, again, it's emotional aspect. It's a positive gut feeling. Dark patterns leverage our trust in service providers, brands that we feel that are trustworthy, brands that we feel that we know, to put us into situations to slip details by us that may act to our disadvantage. Pattern recognition, another big one. And this is maybe even the biggest one out there. Humans are tremendous pattern recognizers. Pattern recognition is that cognitive process that matches information from a stimulus with information retrieved from memory, the ability to see something that's happened in the past and match up what future expectations might be based upon the outcome of previous results. It allows us to predict and expect what's coming. And it's really one thing that's been a huge evolutionary advantage for humans. It requires repetition of experience. And like I said, humans are great pattern recognizers. Other animals do it too, even some less intelligent ones. Koala bears, which are famously unintelligent animals, although they are adorable and cute and cuddly to look at, maybe not necessarily to hold or interact with, but they use it to find eucalyptus leaves, and kind of an example of sort of how that exists out there. But our ability as humans to really become great at pattern recognition is what set us apart from an evolutionary perspective. We also see patterns that don't exist. We call those patterns apophenia. These are things like seeing a man in the moon or figures in the shadows. Or, if we were at a roulette table and we've seen red come up 5 times in a row, we say, well, red might come up a 6th time in a row. Red's on a good run, even though there's no probability or logical reason to think that. We begin to see patterns wherever they aren't. And poison patterns, will sometimes leverage those pattern recognition skills against us.
Hey, Doug.
Yes.
So I might be, if I'm jumping ahead, tell me. Yeah, no. So if this is coming, that's fine. But could we backtrack?
Sure.
If not?
Yeah.
And could you give us maybe an example of a few of these things? Like I was thinking about, well, this one, koalas are adorable, but they want to rip your face off. Everything in Australia does. That kangaroos, same thing. I want to hug them, but they don't want to hug me.
Yep.
I think it was before trust. I'm blanking on what the slide title was.
We had cognitive load.
Cognitive load.
Cognitive load.
Like, what would be a good example of a poison pattern that is leveraging our cognitive load for
absolutely
evil?
No, great point. We are going to go and look at individual patterns and tie in the psychology of this. But the one that we're going to look at here in a little bit has to do with making comparisons about buying apples online. So we'll get more in depth into it. But buying apples online, there are ways that a retailer could present Apple to you and Apple prices that make it difficult to make intelligent comparisons and lead you to making a decision on buying more expensive apples that's going to benefit the business, rather than making the best financial choice, or even the choice that you think you might like a particular type of apples, but because you might perceive one to be more valuable or less expensive, you might make a different choice. And that all has to do with the intrinsic cognitive load, the effort of just trying to figure out, okay, in general, comparing apples isn't particularly easy. The extraneous cognitive load, the way we're presenting that information. Are your apples presented in price per pound? Are they presented in price per apple? Do you group all of your apples together in a bag and sell them at a bag, price per bag? How are we presenting that information? And then the germane cognitive load of saying, okay, now that we've seen all of these different apples, building that scheme of A, how much each apple costs in the way that we can make those comparisons to each other, and then B, perceive relative value. Which ones are we actually going to buy? Which apple is most valuable to us? So yeah, we are going to look at individual patterns. We're not just going to talk about the psychology tonight. We're going to look at the patterns themselves and get some really good examples and high quality examples of every one.
I was already ready to never buy apples when I started thinking about the math involved there.
If you really want to get into the math involved,
too much math, goodbye. Yeah. I don't need it.
And see, this is the problem. See, this is exactly the point, right? Is that these companies are trying to get you to say, okay, well, Honeycrisp apples may cost you, a total of $2.29 per pound. But if we group that in a way where you can't say compared to a Granny Smith, which maybe only costs $1 per pound, that it's going to be difficult for you to find that comparison between the two and think, oh, maybe they're relatively close. So I don't know. It's too much work. I'm going to buy the apples that are more expensive, even if you don't actually realize that they're more expensive or perhaps less valuable to you. So we'll look at.
I was thinking too with that and the pattern recognition that I've been working on some information architecture projects recently, and that findability could definitely be defying pattern recognition and increasing cognitive load so that you are sort of spoofed into. Amazon does it all the time. They have their sponsored and your results, even if you sort them low to high,
Mhm.
they still pop them in there. And that sponsored's pretty small.
It really is. Yeah, it's interesting. We'll certainly look at some of that and be aware of how the cognitive load piece plays into our Apple selection down the road here. But yeah, we are spending this first part talking about the psychology behind things. And then we're going to look at the patterns themselves, talk more specifically about how the psychology plays into these patterns. We don't have every pattern identified, recognized, but we've got quite a few. So definitely some good topics to go on down the road here.
Well, thank you for
Sure.
the.
No worries. No worries at all. Let's jump in, talk real quick about peer pressure. Peer pressure and social proof. You might hear this on under either name. Peer pressure or social proof is direct or indirect pressure from people one knows or to have a similar social status to each other, to themselves. Peer pressure doesn't just have to be the people you know. If you're watching television, movies, video games, if you consider yourself to be part of a group that you're witnessing, whatever media that might be presented to you, that can exert peer pressure or social proof to you to get you to do something that particular group is doing. There's active peer pressure where someone is actually trying to convince someone to actively do something. So if you have two friends that are maybe in a car, someone is saying, hey, you're going real slow, can you go faster? And even if you're at the speed limit, if you have everybody in the car shouting at you, hey, we need to go faster, we're going to be late, or we got to get around this truck or whatever, that's direct peer pressure. Everyone's doing it. Everyone's yelling at me. So that's the active trying to convince people. There's also passive peer pressure, which is modeled or mimicked behavior. So for instance, someone with a lot of friends who text and drive might be more willing to text and drive themselves. Passive peer pressure, noticing the behaviors of the group around us, actually has more influence on our behavior than active peer pressure, than people actively trying to persuade us to do something. Peer pressure isn't always negative. It can influence positive behaviors, but that's not how dark patterns use pressure upon you. Research also shows that team with friends who volunteer are more likely to volunteer themselves, but dark patterns aren't trying to get you to volunteer. They're trying to get you to do something, again, against your best interest. I think this is a picture a lot of us can identify with from last year. It's the concept of scarcity and perceived value. So when something is short supply, like our toilet paper was last year, it's perceived as more valuable. And I think just within the last couple of months, the toilet paper supply around my neck of the woods has finally gotten back to normal. We use an item's availability and perceived abundance to quickly estimate its quality and utility. And this very easily leads to systemic errors and cognitive biases. One thing that I thought was really interesting, this was a 1975 study that was done by some researchers at the New York University. They wanted to know how people would value cookies in two identical glass jars. One jar had 10 cookies, the other jar had just 2 cookies. So people valued the jar with 2 cookies more, even though the cookies were identical. The people who only had the jar with 2 cookies rated the 2 cookies as being more desirable, tastier, and more valuable than the cookies that were in the jar where there were 10 cookies. Scarcity had somehow affected their perception of value. There's also the concept of new scarcity, when something moves from a state of abundance to a state of scarcity. So they continued this cookie experiment. So the researchers came in to the room where there was a jar with 10 cookies, and they said, hey, we made a mistake. We need to give some cookies to other groups. Sorry about that. Or they also said, the cookies are just flying out of the jar with other groups. We got to take some from you, give them to other groups, and find a way to sort of even things out. The highest rated cookies in the experiment, out of all the cookies that were out there, came from the jars that had cookies taken away from them. When we move from that level of abundance to level of scarcity, it really affects the value that we associate with an object, our perceived value of that individual item. And scarcity is certainly something that dark patterns use to try and get us to make decisions that aren't in our best interest. So let's talk about the poison patterns and the different types that are out there. We're going to look at some examples here as well of each one and get a good feel for everything that's going on. Holly, any questions I can answer or anything I can jump in on before we move on to looking at the poison patterns themselves?
No, I think just some general sharing around scarcity in the chat, and with the Amazon, Facebook, they become almost unusable. The filters become kind of useless. And then with everybody's getting toilet paper, which, if you were desperate, you could have ripped up fabric or something. But who's got the ingredients to make soap lying around? But soap was like, there was zero soap shortage,
Yeah.
like,
So,
and that's truly the thing you really desperately needed to have was soap.
mhm.
You could have improvised, maybe not your favorite way, but you could have gotten by with tearing up old t-shirts or something, if you got real desperate for toilet paper. But here in St. Louis on snow days, we call it like French toast day because everybody runs to the store for milk, eggs, and bread. Whether they normally buy or eat those things is not important. The shelves will look just like your picture.
Yeah.
There will be no bread, no eggs, and no milk.
Yeah, we get that sometimes before big storms here in Colorado too, so I can commiserate with that a little bit. And we'll look at some, it's good to know that we're all getting a little bit more back to normal. We'll talk about some some poison patterns here as we go through things. I told you I might slip up my language. I'm doing my best though. We're trying to move that in the right
Do you have
direction.
a post-it? That's my secret. I needed the post-it like right in my.
I have one right here and it's still not helping. I'm trying.
You're doing so good, Doug. I mean, how long have you been saying it the other way? It's like if we suddenly changed your name to something else and started calling you Ted. So
there are worse names out there. That's fine.
Oh my God, why?
So poison patterns are unpleasant, as is our first image on our poison pattern, our Roach Motel. I think I've scared Holly a little bit there. So Roach Motel as our poison pattern to start off with here. Roach Motel is an old term for anything that's easy to get into, hard to get out of. And this poison pattern's no different. It's any situation where a retailer is going to make it easy for you to get in something, difficult to get out of something here. So what we're going to look at as our first example here is Amazon. We've been picking on Amazon. We'll pick on them a little bit more here. And I need a volunteer. Who would like Mike? I know you're on the line. If you're able, can you take yourself off of mute for a moment?
Sure.
I was gonna say, please pick on Mike.
I'm gonna pick on Mike. I'm going to pick on Mike a little bit. All right, Mike here. So I have my Amazon account. I've had Prime set up. I've had my Amazon account for years at this point in time. I want to close my Amazon account. Where am I going to go to close my Amazon account?
Where would you go or where would I go?
Where would you go? Where are you going to go to close your Amazon account?
I would probably click on Hello Doug account and lists.
Okay. Where are we going from here?
Whoa, cognitive load is so high.
Yeah, Mike's starting to pick up on it here. Absolutely.
God. I don't know. I don't want to close it anymore. I'm scared. Maybe logging in your profile. I don't know. There's so many places. I would just start clicking places and looking.
Yeah. So we're starting to feel the cognitive load now. We've got all of these different options to parse through, and we're going, okay, where are we going to go to get this set up? And we're going to populate my password.
This is where I start screaming, I just want to talk to a person.
It definitely helps. I'm going to pause sharing for just a moment while I sign in.
A one-time password. See, this is one of those things where it's like, they assume you're going to read the instructions. Like, maybe I'm old, but does anyone read instructions?
No, actually, our reading patterns are a big part of how dark patterns sometimes slip things by us. You can see my phone number there too. Anybody that wants to call me, feel free. But yeah, it's you can definitely, people don't read websites from top to bottom. Very rarely do people actually read websites from top to bottom. We scan for vital information. Reading patterns play a big part in how dark patterns try and slip information by us. So on our last screen here, where we were looking at all these different pieces, we're scanning, we're trying to find that information. We're trying to look and say, okay, where can I say close my account? There's a lot to scan in here. So our eyes are working overtime trying to figure this out. Again, our cognitive load is building, right? If I'm somebody that's just casually thinking about closing my Amazon account, I may already give up here. I'm going to stop sharing. That's kind of a short share to prove my point.
Probably intentional.
Oh, sorry. Let me go ahead and
that font size, not accessible.
No, decidedly not. So let me give you the answer to how you close your Amazon account, because at one of our meetups where we did this, we actually went through the whole process, had somebody come up to the computer and close out an Amazon account. What you have to do is you either have to call their customer service number, which Amazon does have a customer service number that you can call to close your account. and talk with somebody. If you're like me and don't like actually talking to people, that option's out the window right away. If you go online and search, it will give you an option to go to a menu that is buried deep within your profile settings to get to Amazon's live chat option. You can then chat with, do a live chat with a bot or with a person. If you talk with the bot, you ask to close your account, it's going to play ignorant with you. You have to ask it twice to close your account. Then it will send you to a person to close your account. Once you've gone ahead and talked to that person, they will send you an email. You go into that email, you follow a link. You follow that link to a service center where you confirm that you would like to close your account. They send you another email that says, thank you for closing your account. Your account will be closed sometime in the next 48 hours, which is ridiculous, right? Especially when you compare how long it takes to open an Amazon account. If we're opening a new Amazon account, it takes less than 20 seconds to open an Amazon account versus 2 days to close an Amazon account at the fastest level. Now, if you're persistent and you keep going and talking with people and say, I really want to get this closed, the fastest I've been able to actually get an Amazon closed from the time I started account closed, the time I started the process, ended it, knowing all the steps I had to do was 15 minutes. Compare that to 20 seconds, that's still a lot. Compare 2 days to 20 seconds, it's still a lot. This is the classic Roach Motel. Easy to get into something, difficult to get out of. That is a dark pattern. That is the essence of what a a poison pattern might be. I'm going to get that right by the end of I'm going to nail it by the end of the presentation, but absolutely, definitely an example of that. Let's continue on and move along to our next poison pattern here. As I get back into my slideshow. So forced continuity. Forced continuity is kind of a variation on a Roach Motel. It's pretty much any free trial ever. It's where a company makes getting into a subscription, particularly something that's going to cost you money, very easy, and then silently starts charging your card after the free trial is expired. My favorite example of this is a website. I'm not even going to include the website's name because it is absolute trash. It's for a skincare product that, as far as I can tell, is not an actual skincare product. You can start to see there's a lot of different dark patterns on this homepage already shining through. There should be a lot of red flags going off in your brain when you start seeing this. So we have our only 235 trials available now. This number will actually count down consistently until it gets to 0. It actually resets to 250 trials every time you reload the page. But they're saying, hey, we're moving from this place of abundance to a place of scarcity here. Rush my order. Okay, everybody's doing this. Hurry, claim your free trial now. There's social proofs involved. There's peer pressure being involved here. But the real evil side of this is that once you actually sign up, they do some really difficult things. They say, okay, it's a free trial, 14-day free trial. This is their legalese that they send you through. I would like to buy these folks a small little piece of white space they can use to separate their thoughts called a paragraph. But what it gets down to is this piece here. If you wish to cancel your 14-day free trial, simply contact us at the number below, which, by the way, if you try and call them, they will hang up on you. They will not allow you to actually talk with them in most cases. If you don't call and cancel before your free trial is expired, not only will they charge you for the supposed free trial that they sent out, $89.99, they will continue to send you different new shipments of this for $89.99. There's no way to opt out online. The only way to opt out is to call, and most of the time they won't take your call. Very rarely will you actually get somebody that will talk to you and actually complete the cancellation process. Their Better Business Bureau website is full of people complaining about that. But that is the epitome of what a forced continuity poison pattern looks like. Is, again, easy to get into, difficult to get out of. We're going to charge your credit card. Part of the difficulty is that they have this here in the terms and conditions, and some credit card companies will say, hey, you should have read what you were getting into. If you try and contest that charge, you may be on the hook for it, at least one of those charges. And that's all they need is some people to put this on their card and keep sending out product that's not great, keep continuing to charge you and make money, sometimes very passively. And if you're somebody that spends a lot of money or has a larger bank account, you might not notice $90 coming out every month. I would like to be in that situation myself someday. But it's certainly something that can go by fairly easily without other people recognizing it. So definitely an example of our forced continuity pattern. Also want to talk about privacy zuckering. This is named after no one in particular for no reason whatsoever. We're going to play a game. We are going to play a game called Terms and Conditions. This is termsandconditions.game for anybody that's ever played this. So again, privacy zuckering is all about trying to trick you into giving out more information about yourself. And particularly, a lot of times this is done by trying to get you to agree to terms and conditions. So let's take a look at this website. If you have some time and want to go through it and play here, definitely recommend it, termsandconditions.game. I'm going to go ahead and play now and see some of these patterns. We've got about 30 to roll through here. I'm going to roll through a few of them. All right, thanks for viewing Evil Corp. There's a lot here to read already. Our customers are the most important things to us. We want to give you the best possible experience. Do you agree in terms and conditions? No, I don't. Would you like to not receive our newsletter? Think about the wording of that question, right? Very much a trick question sort of answer here. Would you like to not receive our newsletter? Yes, I would like to not receive our newsletter. Do you agree to terms and conditions? It's nagging us. It's asking us over and over again. Another dark pattern we'll look at here. Do you agree to terms and conditions? Now, look, this is just being ridiculous here. It's changing, swapping back and forth. I got to time it. No, I think I got that one right. There we go. Do you agree to terms and conditions? See our little grayed out box here. So we're using some colors and contrast to try and slip things by us. And Holly, as you'd like to say, decidedly inaccessible there, and particularly so. One of these buttons will accept the terms and conditions. So, okay, I'm going to stop here, but you get the idea. There are lots of different ways that people will try and trick you into giving out information about yourself, terms and conditions, and agree to giving more data than what you would normally feel comfortable with. And this works because data is tremendously important. Data is a huge part of the world right now. In terms of the data that we have, excuse me. Sorry, my PowerPoint is deciding to lock up here for a second. There's a big component of trust here, right? Websites with a privacy policy that, regardless of what that privacy policy is, will get people to disclose 20% more information about themselves, even if that website's, again, privacy policy is unfavorable to the user. There's a sense of peer pressure that goes along with privacy zuckering. If everyone is going to do it, then it must be okay for me to give out all of my data, all of my information about myself. It's particularly effective for apps or services that users perceive to be often owned by their peer groups, or used by their peer groups, rather. There's a perceived value. People are, in general, are really unconcerned with selling their data, despite how much data we give out and how personal that data can be. 77% of people, according to some studies, are either pragmatic or unconcerned about giving out their data, and 26% are entirely unconcerned about who accesses their data for what. So one thing I want to take a look at and kind of highlight here is LinkedIn's old privacy policy. LinkedIn actually ran into some big problems with this. LinkedIn used to have a privacy policy that said anything that you post on LinkedIn, regardless if it's something that you created, regardless if it's something you have copyright to, we can use for whatever purpose we want to. And we don't have to tell you about it. We can get any monetary benefit we want from it. It's ours, is what it boiled down to. LinkedIn's changed their privacy policy a little bit, where essentially they still can do that, but they have to stop if you tell them to stop, where previously they didn't. It ended up leading to a class action lawsuit against LinkedIn. But another example of these terms and conditions, even if they exist, are going to trick us into giving out more information, giving out more of our data, giving out more of ourselves than we are comfortable with. And that's exactly what privacy zuckering is trying to force us into. We're going to look at comparison prevention. We've already talked a little bit about comparison prevention, but this, as our lovely background image will show here, is about our Apple shopping comparison that we were talking about earlier. So this is where a retailer is going to make it hard to compare the price of items against each other, preventing you from making an informed decision. Again, we talked about there's a lot of cognitive load in this, the intrinsic, the extrinsic, and germane cognitive load pieces. Trying to figure out the actual price comparison of items, calculating relevant comparisons, building an internal schema of the relative price of each item in comparison to each other. All of that leads to a lot of frustration. And depending on your frustration tolerance, you're going to start making some of those mental leaps we talked about when we get frustrated, to try and come to a decision and just get the process done as quickly as we can. There's also an element of perceived value there. If the value of online shopping, delivery, and the items received is greater than the perceived cost of going to the store and doing the work to actually sit down, count apples, weigh apples, figure it out, then you're going to give up and simply make your gut choice. And a lot of times that's not going to be something that's in your best interest. It's not just about money, though. It's about time, it's about effort, it's about convenience cost. And we are going to look at an example here from King Soopers, which is my local Kroger affiliate. Pull this up here. As Microsoft PowerPoint is contacting the server for information. Nothing like watching a load screen. All right, here we go. Pull it out from over here. So
your PowerPoint is
that
important
was
to
just
us.
a UI teaching moment, Doug.
Absolutely. No, So one of the things at Western Union that we're trying to deal with is load spinners right now. So I feel like I've been looking at loading spinners for a while. We're going to search for apples here. And just kind of an example here. So, okay, we're searching for apples. I want to buy apples. I love apples. I have apples every day with all of my meals. I love a variety of different apples, but I want fresh apples. That's what I like. That's what's healthiest for me. So I come here and I say, okay, I'm already seeing things in here that aren't apples. I'm seeing some popcorn that's in here for some reason. Not really sure why that's showing up. I see sort of apples of different varieties. So I say, okay, I want to buy things. Oh, I only want to buy things that are in store. And okay, so all right, I'm having to spend some cognitive load here, just trying to get to what it is that I'm looking for. So I'm looking, okay, I want to get something in store, and I want to look at something that is, we'll go with natural or organic. Maybe that'll work out. 158 different entries there. And lo and behold, we have 158 different types of apples. One thing to keep in mind here, though, is that these apples aren't presented to us in a way that we can always make relevant comparisons. Some apples are presented to us in terms of, this is a pouch of apples that has a murky amount of apples. There are 5 that are shown here. It's a 2-pound pouch for $4.99. When we look at individual apples, this individual Honeycrisp apples is $2.84 each. Okay, well, how many apples are we going to get to that compared to the pouch? The cost is $3.70. You can see down here, really tiny print. It's $3.79 per pound. So at least they're giving us something to work with there. So we go, okay, to about $2.84 each. Some are, but you can kind of see we're already starting to build. We're already having to start to do math. All right. We're saying, okay, all right, I'm going to get 2 pounds of apples. I don't know exactly how many, but I know these are about $2.84 each, $3.79 a pound. So I would need to go through, in order to make a comparison to the Simple Truth organic apples, I'm going to have to do some math to figure out, okay, what's the price per pound of this and how many apples am I going to get through here? It looks like I'm getting 5, but is that actually what I'm getting in? And for me, someone who eats an apple every day with his lunch, I want to know how many apples I'm getting. So this already starts to feel like maybe this is a little bit more of a scary sort of stretch for me to go with that 2-pound bag. So again, I'm starting to say, I don't want to do all the math here. I just want to figure out how many apples I want. I want to figure out what I want to get and just be done with this. But we're putting a lot of cognitive load on ourselves, and we're going to start making those mental leaps. They're going to lead us to make decisions that aren't even maybe necessarily what we came in here to do. I might not have known that King Super sells apples in a bag, and I go, well, maybe I want an apple. I don't know. There's a lot that's going on here. King Supers is trying to get us to make a decision that is going to benefit them more than it's going to benefit us, by making the comparison of the items very difficult and not giving us a way that we can make a relative comparison in terms of value and cost.
Do you ever just say screw it and throw Twinkies in the cart instead?
I will not admit to that.
You have your own home gym. I know there's no Twinkies in there, but I have seen your French toast, which looks like there could be a calorie or 2 in there.
I'm not Twinkies, but I like my jelly beans. So
shout
out
I
for
feel
Jelly
like
Bellies.
I learned a secret.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about nagging, which is sort of the next step here. Nagging is continuously asking a question without giving the user an opportunity to select "Don't ask me again." This is every opportunity you've had where you've turned down just to see that pop up come up again. Again, this is about frustration and the feeling that if we ask you enough times, we'll say yes. My 4-year-old loves to do this. Keep asking me the same question over and over again, hoping that I'll break someday. It's a childish approach, but it's one that gets used quite often and by some of the biggest names in the industry. I'm sure anybody that has a phone and has ever watched a YouTube video has seen this YouTube Premium ad pop up. Say, which videos kept playing when you close the app? Get background play with YouTube Premium. Notice that we have the option here to skip trial, which will then ask you again at another point in time down the road, usually within about a week or so, or 1 month free is another option here. We also see YouTube will do this a lot for their YouTube music and other YouTube offerings out there, but we see this a lot from a lot of different places. And that nagging concept of keep asking, don't give a user a way to constantly say no. That's the way this poison pattern. And one of the reasons why it's important to know these patterns is it's important to keep these things in mind if we're asked to do these and implement these. And we'll talk a little bit about those. But this is definitely a conscious choice that people are making in order to continue to ask us, hoping that at some point in time we will say yes. Emotional manipulation is another big one that we see. This is companies using emotional pleas to get us to make a decision that benefits the company, not us. This is using guilt and shame to get us to make a decision that's favorable to the company and maybe against what we came to do, or maybe against our best interest. And this is every shameful exit pop-up you have ever seen. Please don't go, right? We see this every now and then. We've got our little sad face. Sometimes they'll threaten kittens, they'll threaten their developers with extra work, join Amazon Prime, right? Get unlimited free day delivery. Oh, no, thanks. I don't want unlimited 1-day delivery, which makes you kind of sound and feel like maybe a loser of some sort. Delish, show me 14 simple dinners. No, thanks. I'll have a microwave dinner tonight. If you're a cook and you pride yourself on your ability to cook, that's why you're there in the first place. They're guilting you into saying, yes, show me those sample recipes. Does your brand identity need an overhaul? Schedule a consultation. Or no, thanks. I have Microsoft Paint, which as designers, we can all relate to that one. Using Microsoft Paint probably isn't the tool of choice for most of us. And if it is, you are probably so good at it that wouldn't be a problem in the first place. It probably wouldn't be effective on you. But there's definitely a level of shame and guilt that goes into this particular poison pattern. Delayed deals is another one. This is unexpected charges, things like delivery, tax, etc., at or very near the end of a checkout process. Again, this is playing on our cognitive load. By the time that we've gone through the cost of having to figure out what we're getting, what we're buying, we are much more invested, and our cognitive load is at a higher level than when we began the process. And we're unlikely to go back, to the beginning, try and find a different item, or even go to a different website completely. There's also an element of reading patterns in here, that sometimes these may be just presented to you in a way that's difficult to see, difficult to be able to actually perceive on the site. Let's take a look, an example of this from 1-800-Flowers.com. I pull up their website here. Let's see here. I think I'm going to have to actually do this one in Firefox. Let's go ahead and pull up Firefox. Oh, I already got Firefox windows here. All right, so 1-800-Flowers.com. So my wife's and I, we have an anniversary coming up. Hooray! Yes, it will be 7 years at this point in time, which is a long time for her to have been putting up with me.
I was gonna say that's mostly a long time for her. It's probably been a joyous event for you.
100%. I don't know why she sticks around, but she does, and I need to show my love and appreciation for that. Interesting to note that Flowers.com, which is now 1-800-Flowers.com, was an early adapter of UX. And one of the big breakthroughs they had was that people realizing they weren't coming to their website to necessarily buy roses or daisies or chrysanthemums. They wanted to buy things by occasion. And that's how they organize most of their information still to this day. You see things like spring, birthday, sympathy. You can go search by occasion here. I'm going to say my occasion for today is love and romance. So we're going to go ahead, select a love and romance here. I'm going to see if I can find my wife some flowers. And again, keep in mind, we're looking at something that's going to be added here at the end. Okay, filter gifts. Again, I don't want to deal with that. So we're going to go through here. All right, 2 dozen roses. That seems about right. 2 dozen roses for 7 years. Absolutely. 49.
One for each kid.
Absolutely. So I could say,
you earned it.
I don't want to pay $62. I only want to pay $50. So I'm going to select the bouquet only. All right, my cost right now, right at this point, $49.99. Now I'm going to be asked to do some things. I'm going to be asked to enter in some information. So it says select your delivery zip code. Okay, 80128. My location is a residence. I'm going to add this to my cart. Okay, now I have to select a delivery date and say, okay, now I've got to think, oh, when am I going to get this delivered? Our anniversary is on the 21st. Oh, well, I can't deliver that then. I could have it delivered on the 19th, but that's $15. 22nd's fine. We'll select the 22nd. We'll celebrate on Monday. In terms of flowers, that's fine. Oh, I've got something else that's popping up here. Okay, again, we're being forced to make decisions, make choices here. That's adding on to our cognitive load. Do I want to get any of these for her? Probably, but I'm not going to. I'm going to say continue. And again, in my head at this point, the price is still only $49.99. And we can see down here, the price that's being presented to us at this point is $49.99. So let's go ahead and set up a fake delivery address here. And let's see here, gift message. Do I want a gift message? No, I don't really want a gift message. We'll go through here. And so we're continuing on. Okay, now I've got to edit the address, keep the address. We'll keep the address even though I know it's fake. And okay, please select the address. Oh, goodness, now I'm asking to be entered in more delivery information here. Okay, where am I being delivered to? Use this as my billing address. Okay, continue to payment. And again, at this point, my thought process is that this is still a $49.99. I don't know why this is sending me back through the process here. It usually doesn't do that. Yeah, here we go. Method of payment, we'll go fake, make Fakerson. Okay, and 515000000000. As long as it starts with 5150, the system will very likely accept it. Oh no, it's not gonna do that. They have changed this a few times on me. Or they've made their payments. I'm gonna have to grab my fake credit card number. So let's go ahead. We're gonna put in a date, an expiration date here, 25. And let me find that fake credit card number I had pulled out for this. And I'll go ahead and get that thrown in. But you can see I'm doing a lot of work just to get through this pattern, just to get through this process of trying to get this all done. And we can still see my price down here, still showing me $49.99. Let's see here, 1-800-flowers.com. There's my fake card number. My fake MasterCard. Excellent. We're good. Email address, we'll use my signups at denveruxer.com. Great. I don't want to, all right, the same billing phone number, that's fine. I don't want exclusive offers. I don't want promotions. Okay, great. Review my order. Finally, I've gone through so much just to get to this point. And notice how somehow I've got 2 in my cart now. That's interesting. Let's go ahead. I don't know if I can take this one out. Yep, we can remove that here. Yes, remove the item. That's fine. But notice how we've been at $49.99 this whole time. But now all of a sudden I've got shipping charges for $15 in shipping charges. Total before tax, $64.98. What I thought would be $49.99 in tax is now $70.70. That is not presented to me until the very last possible moment, the very last possible step, although that could have been presented to me as a running total throughout as I had gone through the process. The likelihood after spending the time that I've taken to go through this process, make the decisions that I've made, likelihood that I'm going to go somewhere else and find, somebody else that doesn't do this to me, or go back and make a better choice saying this isn't within my budget, this isn't what I wanted to spend, is less likely. They've played upon my frustration tolerance. They played upon my order, and this might not even be something that I see. Notice the placement of the buttons. We've got all of our information here, still says $49.99. If I'm just scanning this page, just using my reading pattern, starting reading left to right, top to bottom, I might just say, okay, I see $49.99. I see my big green place my order button. Away I go. I might not even know it's $70.70 until I get my credit card statement. So absolutely using that pattern against us, and certainly something we see happening here with 1-800-flowers.com. All right, let's see here. Let's jump back in. How are we feeling at the moment? Any questions, thoughts? We doing okay?
I'd put Mike in the corner, but otherwise it's going good.
Okay, sounds good. Let's talk a bit about trick questions then. So trick questions is asking a user a question that seems to mean one thing, but really means another, hoping they'll answer the opposite of their intention. We saw that a bit with the terms and conditions game, but let's talk a little bit about it specifically here. There's a big component of trust working within this, that brands that we feel like we know, that we feel like we've interacted with before, that we're going to trust them to only ask us questions in a direct way. There's also reading patterns pieces that fall into this, that we are going to, again, very rarely will somebody read all of the information on a page or even within a question. If it's a pattern that we've seen before, a particular pattern recognition piece, we might not realize what we're agreeing to unless we read the entire text. Sky TV, for anybody that's tuning in from the UK, may know Sky TV. They're a UK TV provider. Sky has this question: Sky may contact you about products and services. And a lot of people are going to tune out right there. You go, I'm not checking that button for anything. I don't want to get contacted by Sky products and services, but continue reading. Sky may contact you about products and services you may like, unless you click to opt out. So it is kind of trying to sneak that question by us there. It's relying on us to say, this is a pattern we've seen before. I know that if I check that box, I'm going to get, spam emails. So I'm not going to check it. But again, relying on us to say, I'm not going to check anything there, relying on that pattern, using that trick question to ask us something, hoping that we'll answer in a way that is more beneficial to the company than it is still. Lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about addictive design. This is something that we see a lot in social media. Certainly Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all thrive on this. And more apps are using this sort of addictive design in order to really get us to be invested and involved with the technology that we use. This takes advantage of both psychology and physiology. Let's take a look at kind of what the prevailing pattern is with this. This is called the hook framework, is something that we see here. So the hook framework is divided into 4 separate pieces. There's a trigger, there's an action, there's a variable reward, and an investment, which is going to lead you back to the next trigger. So a trigger could be anything that is poking you to interact with the site. It could be something like a notification that pops up on your phone. I have a game that I like to play that will sometimes yell at me and say, hey, there's a new release for this game, come back and play us. And I go, okay, that's an example of an external trigger. But an internal trigger could be, particularly for me, oh, I haven't checked Twitter in 15 minutes. I should probably go check it again because they have me a bit hooked at this point in time. So again, it can be internal or external, some thought, some piece that's triggering us to go and interact with the app or product. From there, we need to perform an action of some sort, whether that's posting a tweet, whether that's liking somebody's tweet, whether that's playing our game. We need to do something. We need to take some action within this, because the action is going to give us some sort of variable. If I go and post a tweet, I may get a lot of people liking my tweet. I may hear from people that I'm interested in. I might hear from Mike. I might hear from Holly. I'm going to be in touch with my friends. There's a variable reward there. I can see the likes piling up. I can see the views on my videos. There is that reward that we get even for playing games. Oh, you signed on today? Okay, well, here's a little bit of extra in-game cash. Here is a cool hat for your in-game character. Some sort of reward. When you get that reward, that builds your investment in the product. That's going to say, I feel like this is a part of who I am, a part of what I want to do, a part of my daily life. And that investment is going to make you more likely to respond to that trigger. Like I said, this is not only a psychological piece, but there's a physiological piece here, particularly in the reward and investment side of things. When we get those rewards and we feel that investment, that's our body releasing our feel-good chemicals. And those chemicals can be very, very strong motivators for us in our interactions with technology. So certainly a big part of what makes the hook framework work and what makes it really, I do call it a poison pattern, because the tendency that we have to be addicted to our technology, to be addicted to our social media, to be addicted to our interaction with the world through our phones is only increasing. And I think it's only increased more in the last year when we've been so far separated. We need to find ways that encourage people to use applications like social media responsibly. The more that we rely on these hook type of frameworks, particularly the trigger action reward cycle, the more difficult it's going to be to get away from that. We need to start thinking about that now and designing in a way that is ethical and responsible for our users, and not just always taking the company's interest into account. We will talk a little bit about some of the separation there in terms of how we think of things in terms of our responsibilities to users and responsibilities to our company, but want to take a quick look at this here and at least broach that subject a little bit. The last one I want to talk about here is brute force, right? Sometimes companies will just make things difficult programmatically, systematically. They will use technology against you in order to force you into making a decision that you wouldn't otherwise make. A great example of this popped up here recently on Twitter. We'll go ahead and watch this here. Got a nice little video. This comes from Kelly Thoreau, and this person is trying to rate an app in the App Store. Notice you can't go back. You can't rate it 1 or 2 stars. You can rate it 5 stars. It will light up and let you submit there, but you can't cancel out. And you can rate it 4 stars. That's okay. 3 stars, even that's okay. But you can't go down to 2. You can't go down to 1. You can tap as much as you like, but this application has made it impossible for you to rate this app anything less than 3 stars. Regardless of what your intent is, the only way I can imagine would be to either not rate it, go through the App Store and put a rating in there, which again is going to take more effort, a higher cognitive load. You're just unlikely to go ahead and do that. So that company is again using some of those psychological pieces against us in order to get us to make a decision that is in their best interest. So that's what I have for the patterns. There are other patterns out there. I don't pretend that these are all the poison patterns in existence. There are plenty that I haven't talked about. There are plenty that are becoming more and more common. So if you see something, we'll talk a little bit about how you can raise some flags about that, but definitely want to move on and talk a little bit about why this all matters. Anything that we wanted to ask about or talk about before we headed down that road? Okay, So why does this matter? From a user experience design perspective, user experience design is a design process whose sole objective is to design a system that offers a great experience to its users. Poison patterns are the anti-UX. They have real-world implications for businesses in terms of customer loyalty, repeat business, social impact. There are ethical concerns, obviously, with using these. From the UXPA Code of Conduct, there are several points that we want to keep in mind as designers when we go about creating a design and trying to create an ethical design. We want to act in the best interest of everyone. We want to be honest with everyone. We want to do no harm and, if possible, provide benefits, act with integrity, avoid conflicts of interest, respect privacy, confidentiality, and anonymity, and provide all resultant data. That is all the points in the UXPA Code of Conduct, with the possibility of the last one, provide all resultant data, which has really more to do with research. Poison patterns violate every point that you could have in a code of conduct for design professionals. So why do we keep doing this? And what would you do if you were asked to do it? Because it's a very slippery slope to tread. If you're asked to implement a poison pattern, you have to figure out how you're going to respond to that. Ethical stands can get you fired. And in a market where there are so many people that are vying to get in, if you say no, there's a possibility they might let you go and find somebody who will say yes, or they'll find another designer on the team that will say yes. You do want to tread carefully here. And the key, and the reason why I'm doing this, why we're talking about these patterns tonight, and then so that you can take them and go and persuade people to use to do bad things with all these patterns, it's so that you can identify them when stakeholders come to you and say, why don't we do this? Or I saw this at a different website. Why don't we try this approach? For you to be able to say, that's not an ethical way to approach things. That doesn't benefit our users. And from a perspective of growth, studies show that companies that consistently apply dark patterns within their practice don't reap the long-term financial rewards. There's a huge eroding impact on customer trust and usability scores for companies that implement these on a consistent and regular basis. So you do want to make sure that you take this, from a professional standpoint, when this comes up in conversation of your work and conversation with your peers, of being an educator, of saying, this is why we shouldn't do this. But we also need to know that a lot of times we don't have the power to say no, and that there are many designers out there who have put in patterns like this against their own wishes because others in the business wanted them to do that. Unfortunately, where we are in the design community at this point in time, we don't always have the ability to define everything about our design. We have to bend to the will of stakeholders, which is one of the fundamental issues of user experience design, is that we ride that very fine line between serving our users and serving our business. Our users wouldn't be coming to us if our business wasn't offering something that they wanted. Our business would not exist without the users. Very often, we are the only people within an organization that have the users' wants, goals, needs, and pain points front and center. So it's up to us to advocate, to educate, and to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep our users in a good, healthy, in terms of the patterns that we expose them to, and the way that we interact with them. If we see them online,
I'm going to pop in. We've got a couple questions piling up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to ask you before we got too far. Mm-hmm. So Kimberly was asking, Doug, do you know what legal restrictions exist both in America and worldwide for poison patterns?
It varies, and there are efforts that are being made around the world to address these with varying levels of success. There's a lot of problems with trying to legislate these out of existence. Some problems is that there are already laws on the books that prevent some of these things from happening. The forced continuity is one of them. There are some laws that are around how free trials work, what you're allowed to charge. But if a company isn't based in a jurisdiction that falls under those rules, it might be very difficult for that jurisdiction to get a hold of that company or get a hold of the profits from violating those patterns. Same thing, with the data privacy provisions that have been passed in Europe over the last few years. We see a different approach to these. They're still finding ways to get around them, even though there's been attempts there. California has recently implemented some legislation designed to try and root these out. But in the end, there's always going to be a way that people can find to get around the legislation or to just not be affected by it, whether it's a legislative piece that isn't in their jurisdiction or maybe has overly broad or underly broad language. It's very difficult to legislate these pieces out. That's why it's important to be talking about these from an ethical perspective as designers, and to be doing that good work now to make sure that we are, as designers, leading that ethical charge and making sure that we're policing ourselves and doing the best that we can to be that voice for our users.
And I think that's an interesting topic. Maybe we can explore a different day. Is, much like accessibility, it took WCAG, the World Consortium on Accessibility Guidelines. I think I got that right. No, but it's still, or the ADA, that's the American Disabilities Act. Every country has their own set of laws and own set of rules, and how they get applied and what's enforceable and what's not varies from one place to the next. And then how often that's actually enforced might vary from one state to the next within a country. And I think that these sorts of things kind of fall under the same type of umbrella. But I've thought a lot about, we have the UXPA is probably our closest thing to like a code of conduct or ethical guidelines. But we don't have a governing body like the Bar Association for lawyers, right?
Right.
We don't have something where if someone is purposefully, taking advantage of the public in some way, there isn't there's nobody to report it to. It's a case by case situation.
Yeah. And you see some people thinking that design and design professionals may be moving towards a licensing route, similar to what you might have to pass, like a bar exams type of thing, like what lawyers do.
That actually segues perfectly to the next question, which is, do you think licensing is a viable route for UX to prevent this?
I don't think it's viable, no. And I don't, that doesn't mean that people won't try. That doesn't mean that it won't happen. I don't think it's an effective way to do things, because the designers are, by and large, are not the issue here. It's the business stakeholders, and it's the people that we work with that are putting pressure on the designers to meet particular metrics, or have pressure on themselves to meet metrics or hit goals. I don't think most people roll out of bed and say, I'm going to trick somebody into doing something against their best interest today. I don't think anybody wants to go to work and have that be part of their everyday job. That would be miserable. So yeah, I mean, if you license designers, maybe that cuts down on a little bit, but you're not going to the root of the problem there. The other big problem I see with that is one of the great benefits that the UX world gives to the technology community is that we bring in people from all walks of life. I know people that have gotten into UX after being burger flippers, housewives, journalists, lawyers, doctors, engineers, on and on and on, from every walk of life. You don't get that in almost any other part of the tech world. Maybe to an extent, a little bit in the development area, but certainly not to the route that we do. And I think that is a tremendously important and valuable asset to companies that comes along with having a good user experience team, is having that diversity of viewpoints and backgrounds. The licensing route would certainly decrease that, because it adds that barrier of entry to people getting into the industry and making it either a financial barrier or a knowledge barrier. It's not something that we need. And I don't think it would be helpful. That doesn't mean people won't try it, but I don't think it will solve any problems if it's taken up.
And I agree. I think that we already have some equity problems with a lot of job requirements that you must have a degree. Is that really, I always want the message to hiring managers, is that really a nice to have or a have to have? Because you might be missing out on some really talented people who have real world experience that not to say I don't value higher ed, I have a master's degree, but that doesn't mean I know how to apply those things.
Sure.
And so barrier to entry can be very divisive, and it can exclude people who are already marginalized for various reasons. If it's a must have, not a nice to have. And I think licensing might do the same thing. And like you said, it's really up the ladder where the problem starts. If someone is asked to do something that they don't feel comfortable doing, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. They may not be able to just get up and walk away from their job that day.
Oh yeah, absolutely not.
They have a sick family member they need to take care of, or they're sick and they need their health insurance, and it doesn't align with their moral compass, but they also have, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which says they need to keep a roof over their head, right? And so I think, from my perspective, it's a level above where we live that the change needs to be driven. What do you think?
I think it's a privilege to have enough money in your bank account to be able to say, I don't need this job. I don't need you. And I can walk away at any given time. Even where I am in my career at this point in time, having reached that manager level for a very large, very old company, I still don't really have that ability. And I think the vast majority of people in our industry don't. It is a privilege to be able to have that, having known some people that have been able to do that. That's great. And it's different too when you're a young designer, perhaps, that somebody that doesn't have a family to take care of, to just say, oh, I'll have ramen for a month or whatever it might be. There was a time in my life where I could have done that and did do that with a few different employers. But for the most part, people can't do that. And that's where I say you need to be careful about how you respond to requests for these type of patterns or inquiries about them, because a lot of times you can't afford to be out of work. That's just who it is. That's just a fact of our existence at this point in time, and particularly in a pandemic where in the United States, where your healthcare is tied to your job, where your ability, if you get sick, to get healthy again and not be financially ruined is whether or not you're employed, regardless of what your industry or your individual employer has been doing with laying people off. It's certainly something that is problematic. So you do need to tread carefully. That being said, just because you are forced to do something doesn't mean you need to stay with that person either. Even with my own team, the people that I work with at Western Union, I don't know if Jay is on the line tonight or Amrit or Mateen. Those are my my employees at Western. I don't want to call them my employees, my coworkers who happen to be on my team working with me. One of the things I tell them is keep your resume up to date, keep your portfolio up to date, get reviews on it, apply for jobs. You're probably not going to be here forever. And I want you to be prepared to take that next step in your career, because that's important to me, that you're being nurtured and grown. I would love for that to be at Western Union. I want those opportunities to come to my team to allow them to grow professionally. But I know that that's not always the case. But that's something that we should all be doing, regardless of who you are, regardless of what your role is, regardless of how happy you are with your job right now. That can change in a flash, in a heartbeat. At any given day, it can have nothing to do with you. So that's kind of my big takeaways. Always be thinking about networking. Always keep your portfolio up to date. Always keep your resume up to date. Even if you interview for jobs with no intent of changing jobs, interview for jobs every now and then, because it keeps your interview skills up to par. Do the research to understand the questions that are being asked out there, the trends that are going on. Engage with the community. It's an important part of keeping yourself fit from a career perspective, and also fit from a mental health perspective, to know that if something does happen, you can go out there and say, I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm ready to find something else, because this is not where I want to be anymore.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I do think that, it doesn't relieve us of the responsibility to try and advocate for what is good.
Mm-hmm.
I just, like with accessibility, it doesn't mean you're going to be successful.
Yeah, no, definitely not. It doesn't relieve you the responsibility of that. You still have to try, right? Nobody's saying give up. I'm not saying that, but I am saying know that you're not always going to win those battles. Even if you do the best job in the world, it still might be a fight that you're not going to win. And there will come a time in everyone's career where you're going to have to decide, from an ethical perspective, is this someplace where I want to be? Even the last job I was doing, where I was working in the defense intelligence industry, there was a lot of conflict in myself there. Is this even an industry that I want to be in, regardless of the patterns that we're implementing? It's a problem, right? And it's something that we have to think about. And that's why we need to keep ourselves fit, because we never know what's going to happen internally or externally, and how we're going to be seeing things down the road.
And I think things like you're doing tonight it's not that you shouldn't advocate on the job, whether it's accessibility, inclusion, excluding, making sure poison patterns aren't part of the work. I recently went to a talk where somebody was talking about like making bad actor personas. Like, if we include that, like, we know that there's people out there who are not great. What can we do to make it hard for them to misuse our product,
Right.
to use it for something that's not good instead of what we intended to. But I think, outside of work, you can do things like what you're doing tonight, which is continue to spread that message and evangelize it. And that doesn't put your paycheck on the line. You
Right.
can still have a voice. Maybe you don't win at work when you want to, but you're still allowed to have a voice when you aren't at work.
Yeah. And that's the reason why I do this, and the reason why I'm out here talking with people tonight, is in large part because the community is tremendously valuable to me, and the value that I get out of being able to share my thoughts and share my expertise is tremendous. So I recommend that anybody do it, because it's something that you'll get a lot of value of the more you start to share. But it is important to be able to exercise those parts that you don't necessarily get to talk to or work on. This poison patterns talk that I've done is probably the one that I've done the most. And it's one that I enjoy doing, on a consistent basis. But it's also one that I think is not one that I've had to exercise a whole lot. I haven't had a lot of people coming up to me and saying, "Oh, we need to do this," or "There's a lot of pressure to move that, and we need to figure out a way to do that." So for me, it's important from my professional perspective to say, I want to be aware of these. I want to be thinking about ethical design. I want to keep that front and center of my mind, even if I'm lucky enough to work for a company where that's not an issue. But if you're on the fence of being a content creator and being able to come out into the community, whether it's writing, whether it's YouTube videos, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever format you might be thinking about, by all means do it. It's a little bit scary, but the rewards are great, not only in terms of what you get for yourself, but and also in terms of what you do for the community. We need each other. We got to be here for each other now more than ever. We need that sense of community and belonging. And I think this is a great way to do it. So I hope somebody out there listening to this will take that dive here in the near future.
Absolutely. And I think that's why you and I were like instant connection, because that's a core value. Also, AJ would like next Friday off.
Jay, send me an email.
All right. Well, we should probably move along, but thank you for that. Those were I think I covered, there was a lot of chitter chatter in there, but I think I covered the questions. I'm not sure AJ's question was totally direct. I think he was maybe trying to slide that in there.
That's okay. And I really just at this point in time, I'm not sure that I have much more to say other than I want to make sure that we get to everybody's questions. I know we're just a little bit past the time we said we might go to. I'm happy to stay around if anybody has some more questions, and happy to chill out for a bit. But it's important to me again that I get the opportunity to talk and interact with people. So hopefully we're able to get through. I am looking at chat now. So if you do have a question that hasn't been answered and you want to throw it up there, please feel free to do that. But yeah, I do want to take just a quick moment to say thank you all so much for coming out. It's touching to me to be able to talk with the community and be able to give back, and to see so many people here come out for me it's cool. So thank you very much.
And I want to invite everyone out to the next meetup, because I really enjoyed the chit chat going on in the chat line, and we normally don't get as many fun personalities. So I'm going to invite you all out to our next meetup to keep the conversation going.
The people I bring to the table are the best people. I always say that. They're wonderful people who have great personalities and approach things from the right way. The community I've surrounded I shouldn't say I've surrounded myself with, that has surrounded me with online is a tremendous one. I'm really happy to see everybody here, and happy to see some familiar faces and some old faces and some new faces as well too.
And I really, the thing that I really appreciate about you, Doug, is that you are someone who is very transparent about and very authentic, and you do things like talk about struggling with imposter syndrome, even though you've hit some of the milestones that you wanted to in your career, and struggling with anxiety and things. And I think that it's really important, particularly for people who are in leadership positions, to be open and honest about that, because it is the human experience. And if this is, as UX practitioners, that's empathy is the foundation of it, right? That's our bedrock. And we need to have that for each other. and practice it. And I think that being open and honest about those things lets people who are new or maybe who have been around for a while know that that's okay. And that's like just part of being a person. And that doesn't have to stop you from being successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm seeing some thank yous come through on the line too. Thank you, everyone. That's tremendous. But yeah, I never intended to come out and have a large following like I've ended up having, which is a blessing. And that's just who I am at this point in time. Is I try and be open and honest and do the best I can, knowing that I'm going to fail, like I did say dark patterns as much as I did during class tonight. But at least trying to move the needle in the right direction and be a good example of even if I'm not always successful, trying to keep moving forward and remember the human, particularly on social media. I think there's a tendency to see the thought leaders and the influencers as people who live these kind of charm lives or don't deal with any of the stuff like imposter syndrome or that type of thing as part of their everyday lives. But we all do. We're all there. We're all just people when it comes down to it, just trying to be the best that we can. And for me, that means trying to lead an ethical life and trying to lead an ethical practice of business and trying to build, the best group of people around me that I can, whether that's in my family, with people that are around me in terms of business associates and the team that I work with, or the community I interact with online. I'm just blessed that there are so many wonderful people in my life, and it's a real joy to be able to give back. So if you followed me for a while, please continue to follow me. And if you haven't followed me yet, definitely know you can follow me I didn't realize I had that still up there. You can follow me any of my social media handles. Again, I'm most active over on Twitter, a little bit on Instagram, very seldomly on YouTube, some on LinkedIn. On Snapchat, I don't think anybody follows me there, but if you do, it's probably fairly boring. But again, at Doug Collins UX, you can find me anywhere under that username. And very, very blessed to be able to interact with you all, and tremendously thankful for the opportunities that having you in my life gives me. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Doug. I think there was one more question before we close. Everybody's so chit-chatty. Let's see. I think I can find it. There's like socialism, capitalism. It got deep in here for a minute.
Yeah, I can see the capitalistic undertones of these poison patterns, right? That the dollar is the end result, and that as we chase that, we are forced to do things that are not in the best interest of an ethical life for ourselves or for our community. I don't want to get too far into the capitalism versus socialism thing, but I will say this, that it's not just about the dollars and cents. That user experience does rely on having a financial component to it. Without that, we wouldn't have a job. If we couldn't show value in our ROI, nobody would hire us, and rightfully so from a capitalistic perspective. That being said, having good UX, designing ethically, keeping users front of mind is what our profession was founded on, is what makes us good at what we do, is what makes us good in terms of contributors and the value that we add to a company. It is a very tough line to walk, and it's one that is tremendously difficult to parse, but it's not a battle we're going to win overnight either. Anybody that's tried to start a UX practice in any organization of any size has faced pushback at some level, and a lot of times it's been from that ROI perspective. What value are you adding within the company? Know that the value of having a good user experience, of adding trust, of adding loyalty will far outweigh the benefits of that quick dollar, and that's how you build a successful business and a successful organization down the road, not only in terms of dollars and cents, but in terms of loyalty, organization of your users, and also the people that you work with. So keep that in mind. In terms of where I lie on that, if anybody wants to talk more about that with me, I'm happy to do that offline, but I don't think I need to spill the whole beans on that out here. I try very hard.
Yeah, I was looking for the question and it was buried. It got real deep, but I did find this, and this is a very applied sort of question. I think you can probably answer pretty quickly. It comes from Caroline, who says, do you have any advice or lessons or tactics for advocating for human forward patterns. So I think, I don't want to paraphrase for her, but I think she's asking for, in regular life, do you have any advice for how we can advocate for the patterns that are beneficial?
Right. I think for me, the best way that I've always been able to present it is put yourself in their shoes, right? Imagine that you're the user seeing these things coming up on your screen. How are you going to react to that? It's one thing to ask that question. It's another thing to show it. If you're doing it in terms of a job, actually running your usability tests and bringing those results back in video form to say, hey, when we put this particular pattern up there, this is how users reacted, and it wasn't good. It can be a very powerful way to advocate against those, particularly if you've been forced to put up one of those patterns on your screen. That can kind of be another route to try and say, hey, we really shouldn't do this. But I think the other thing is to, as much as possible, influence the environment around you to be an environment for good, to surround yourself with good people as much as you're capable of doing that, and to find allies that support an ethical approach to business and to life. Everybody fails. Nobody is fully ethical. I certainly do things that aren't the best, but if you're building your team with a focus on finding the people that are not only skilled, but are going to help you build a good ethical practice and keep users and their journeys at the front of your mind, I think that's how you build a successful team. When we were out there looking for people within the Denver UX world that could join the Western Union team, that was something that I had considered as well too, was finding people that fit that ethical mold. And I'm very glad to have connected with Jay on this role and to have him on the team. And I feel like he fits that role great. I was lucky because I was in a hiring perspective there, but not everybody has that influence. So, if you have the ability to have that influence on the hiring process and make that something that you look for and ask about and as part of the hiring practice, I definitely recommend that. And if not, just do what you can. Every little bit helps, and you'll get returns on every little investment you make down that path.
Alan, I have a mentor who says, it's not pie. There's plenty for everyone.
Yeah.
Look for opportunity to share opportunity. So AJ has a question here. I'm only going to do this because I know that he works for you, and maybe this can get slipped into the Twitter feed since we're so far over and we need to close. But I think it's a fantastic question, and I hope to see it. And it is there one thing you wish you knew when you first started your career? So this is going to be our cliffhanger. Do you think you could squeeze this into Twitter? Into the UX talk?
I definitely could. So we'll make that our question for tomorrow. So if you want to follow me over on Twitter, again, at Doug Collins UX. I don't think I have anything set up for tomorrow. So that's a good one. The one thing that you wish that you had known when you started UX. I don't usually respond to the questions myself. I usually let the community respond and then just kind of chime in if I have thoughts about particular responses, but I'll respond to this one. So if you want to know my response, go ahead and follow me over there.
Is there one thing you wish you knew when you first started your UX career?
And I know what my answer for that's
I bet you could text him if you needed to.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I'm going to go ahead, and I'm sure you are, I'm sure the shorties would love to see their daddy.
One's teething and in bed, the other one's headed that direction. So I'm sure he's going to want a story from dad.
Yeah. I mean, who can blame him? Like,
right.
Or can we sneak any Legos in there?
He has Legos. He has Legos in his room all night, so he just gets up early and plays with them, and that's fine. He's nice and quiet. So I've got some new Legos though to play with, so there'll be some more Lego Duplo content for anybody that oddly follows me for that. But yeah, definitely some more things coming up.
As soon as my computer catches up here, I'm gonna show. Oh, here we go. I need like 2 more seconds.
That's okay.
I think it's just that sometimes when I have the Zoom going, it gets a little laggy. Elena, if you would like to take the microphone, m'lady.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Sorry, if it's loud, it's because it's family game night and it sounds like even the dog is getting involved. So You might hear some yells and barks and whatnot behind me. Did you want to share? Are you able to share the screen, Holly?
Well, I thought I was,
there it
but
is.
hold
Okay.
on, I'm doing it again. Okay, so now there we go.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you so much for another amazing talk. I was fortunate to be part of the Coder Girl cohort when I first heard this talk, and it's just a lot of it just really opened my eyes to things that I had encountered, and just there were names to the things that I had encountered. So we are St. Louis Experience Design Group. We are, or STLX for short. We're a small organization that holds events like this and that continues to support quality experience design content, educate folks, and all for free. So if you would like to become a member, there are 3 tiers here. You can go to, and I will post this in the chat,